Russia and Turkey agree ceasefire in northwestern Syria. Vladimir Putin expresses hope that the deal could end civilian suffering and help contain a humanitarian crisis. Russia and Turkey have agreed a ceasefire in Idlib in northwestern Syria, coming into force at midnight. It comes after the country's leaders, Vladimir Putin and Recep Tayyip Erdogan, held more than 6 hours of talks in Moscow aimed at ending hostilities in the country's last rebel stronghold. Mr. Putin has expressed hope that the deal could end civilian suffering and help contain a humanitarian crisis, 9 years after the start of Syria's civil war. He said, "I express hope that these agreements will serve as a good basis for a cessation of military activity in the Idlib de-escalation zone and stop the suffering of the peaceful population and the growing humanitarian crisis." The agreement involves a truce along the existing battle lines and envisages the establishment of a 7-mile-wide security corridor along the M4 road. Advertisement: It will be jointly patrolled by Russian and Turkish troops and will begin on 15 March. Mr. Erdogan said, "We will work together to supply aid for the Syrians in need." He added that Turkey retained the right to respond to all Syrian regime attacks in the field. Russia and Turkey support opposing sides in the conflict, with Moscow backing President Bashar al-Assad and Ankara supporting some rebel groups. There have been several ceasefire deals in Idlib in recent years which have collapsed. Russian airstrikes have supported an offensive by Assad forces in Idlib that has caused what the UN says may be the worst humanitarian crisis of the conflict. Moscow has, however, repeatedly played down any talk of a refugee crisis and accused Turkey of violating international law by sending troops to Idlib. Ankara has funneled troops and equipment into the area in recent weeks to repel the Syrian government's advance and prevent a wave of refugees crossing its southern border. The fighting, which has raised fears of a direct confrontation between Russia and Turkey, has left 60 Turkish troops dead in the region since last month. Mr. Putin expressed his regret to Mr. Erdogan about the killing of 34 Turkish troops in a recent airstrike, saying the Syrian military was not aware of their location. Ahead of the talks, at least 16 civilians were killed when Russian airstrikes hit a group of displaced people near the town of Marat Misrine in Idlib, according to civil defense workers who were helping to clear the rubble and search for survivors. Russia denies targeting civilians. 2 witnesses reported seeing more Turkish forces deploying into Idlib, while Russia's RIA news agency reported that rebels had resumed shelling the strategic town of Sarajeb in Idlib, where Russian military police are located. Turkey's defense ministry said it had destroyed 4 tanks, 5 rocket launchers and a dozen military vehicles in artillery and airstrikes in the last 24 hours. Ankara hosts some 3.6 million Syrian refugees and says it cannot take any more. In a bid to get more funding and support from Europe over Idlib, Turkey said last week it would no longer abide by a 2016 deal in which it stopped migrants crossing into the EU in return for billions of euros in aid.